A single decision by a billionaire and Britain's entire economy began to shake. Plus no election, no parliamentary vote. Yet markets plunged, investors panicked, and emergency meetings erupted inside Downing Street. Elon Musk has openly drawn a battle line against Keir Starmer, and the impact goes far beyond politics. This is about your money, your jobs, and the future of Britain itself. This is not a warning. This is a direct show of power, and Britain is already paying the price. It began quietly, almost invisibly. No dramatic announcement, no press conference, just signals, sudden statements, strategic decisions. And then, all at once, the message became clear. Elon Musk was no longer criticising policy. He was confronting power. What insiders now describe as an open confrontation between Musk and the Starmer government has sent a chill through Britain's political and economic system. For months, tensions had been building. Musk repeatedly questioned the UK's direction on regulation, innovation, speech and business freedom. At first, it sounded ideological, then it became personal. Sources close to the situation say Musk views the current government as hostile to growth, hostile to innovation and hostile to global capital. And unlike traditional critics, Musk doesn't just talk. He moves money, he moves companies, he moves markets. The moment everything changed came when Musk reportedly froze planned UK investments and signalled a broader pullback. Not as a warning, as a statement. Within hours, analysts began recalculating growth forecasts. Venture capital firms paused UK deals. Tech founders quietly began asking the same question. Is Britain still open for business? Downing Street tried to project calm. Officials dismissed the reaction as noise. But behind the scenes, the mood shifted fast. Senior advisors understood the risk immediately. Musk is not just a billionaire, he is a symbol. When he acts, others follow. And that's exactly what started happening. Within days, financial indicators began flashing red. The pound wobbled. Tech stocks dipped. Confidence surveys showed a sudden drop among foreign investors. This wasn't caused by legislation. It wasn't caused by a vote. It was caused by belief, or rather the loss of it. The Starmer government now faces a dangerous reality. In the modern economy, power doesn't only sit in parliaments, it sits in platforms, capital flows and perception. And Musk controls all three. His companies shape communication, transportation, energy and space. His decisions ripple globally. When he signals distrust, markets listen. What makes this moment explosive is timing. Britain is already fragile. Growth is weak. Public confidence is low. Businesses are cautious. And now, one of the world's most influential figures is effectively telling global capital to think twice about the UK, not with slogans, with action. Inside Whitehall, emergency meetings are underway. Officials debate whether this is ideological conflict or economic warfare. Some urge confrontation, others warn that escalation could accelerate damage because once capital starts leaving, reversing the flow is painfully hard. This is no longer about Elon Musk versus Keir Starmer. It's about whether Britain can afford to lose the confidence of the world's most powerful economic actors. And what happens if it already has. As news of Musk's move spread, the reaction was immediate and brutal. Financial markets don't wait for confirmation, they react to signals. And this signal was loud. London traders described a sudden shift in mood, a sense that something fundamental had changed. Not because a law was passed, but because confidence had cracked. When belief breaks, numbers follow. Within hours, analysts began revising outlooks for the UK tech sector. Startups that relied on foreign capital saw funding conversations stall. Venture firms paused term sheets. Bankers started asking uncomfortable questions about political risk, something Britain had largely avoided for decades. The message circulating quietly through financial circles was simple and alarming. The UK is becoming unpredictable. Elon Musk didn't need to make threats. His reputation did the work for him. When he pulls back, others assume there's a reason, and soon the ripple effects became visible. Several multinational firms quietly delayed expansion plans. Some rerouted investments to Europe and Asia. These decisions weren't announced. They didn't need to be. The The damage was happening in silence. Inside the Treasury, officials scrambled to assess the fallout. Emergency briefings were held late into the night. Economists warned that if the perception of hostility toward innovation hardened, Britain could lose its competitive edge permanently. Once capital chooses a different home, it rarely comes back quickly, especially in a global economy with plenty of alternatives. Downing Street attempted to regain control of the narrative. Statements were issued emphasising stability, openness and long-term confidence, but they landed flat. Because credibility was the real problem, markets weren't reacting to words, they were reacting to Musk's actions, and actions carry weight. The political danger for Starmer is growing by the hour. Critics now argue that the government has underestimated how global power actually works. In the digital age, influence doesn't require office, it requires reach. Musk commands attention across finance, technology and culture. When he signals distrust, millions listen, not because they agree with him, but because they fear being late to react. Public opinion is beginning to shift as well. Polls show rising concern that Britain is pushing away innovators and investors at the worst possible moment. Small business owners worry about knock-on effects. Tech workers fear layoffs. Students question whether opportunity will exist at home or abroad. This is how economic anxiety spreads, quietly, relentlessly. Meanwhile, insiders reveal that Musk's frustration runs deeper than policy disagreements. He reportedly views the government's approach as dismissive, even hostile, toward the very forces driving modern growth. Regulation, rhetoric and tone have all played a role. What began as criticism has hardened into confrontation. And the most unsettling part, Musk hasn't escalated yet. No full statement, no direct address, no dramatic move. That restraint is fueling speculation. Because when Musk goes silent, markets brace. Silence in this case feels like preparation. Across Britain's financial and political centres, one question dominates private conversations. If this is just the opening move, what happens next? Because if Musk decides to act again, publicly, decisively, the shockwaves could be far greater. And Britain's already fragile economy may not be ready to absorb them. As uncertainty deepens, attention turns to Elon Musk himself. Not just what he has done, but what he might do next. Because Musk's influence doesn't operate on a single front. It spans technology, finance, communication and culture. And that is what makes this moment so dangerous for the UK. This isn't a disagreement that can be managed with a press release. It's a clash between state power and private influence on a global scale. Behind closed doors, officials now treat Musk as a systemic risk, not in the traditional sense, but in perception. If he frames the UK as hostile to innovation, that narrative can spread faster than any official rebuttal. His platforms shape how millions understand the world. His companies shape where billions in capital flow. When those two forces align, governments lose control of the story. Sources say Musk is particularly angered by what he sees as mixed signals. Publicly, the government speaks of growth and investment. Privately, regulations tighten, approvals slow, rhetoric hardens. To Musk, that contradiction signals danger, and to investors watching from abroad, it suggests uncertainty, the one thing capital hates most. Inside Britain's tech sector, anxiety is rising. Founders worry that access to global networks could shrink. Engineers fear projects will be relocated. Executives quietly discuss contingency plans. These conversations rarely make headlines, but they shape outcomes. When people prepare to leave, momentum shifts long before anyone actually does. Starmer now faces a strategic dilemma. Confront Musk and risk escalation, or attempt quiet reconciliation and risk looking weak. Either path carries political cost. Opposition figures accuse the government of driving away opportunity. Supporters argue that no billionaire should be allowed to pressure a democratic state. The public is caught in the middle, unsure who holds the moral high ground, but fully aware of the economic risk. Internationally, the situation is being watched closely. Other governments are studying how Britain responds. If Musk can pressure the UK, could he do the same elsewhere? If Britain bends, does that set a precedent? This isn't just about one country, it's about the balance of power between elected leaders and unelected economic giants. In the 21st century, markets continue to react to every rumour. A leaked comment, an anonymous briefing, a speculative headline. Volatility becomes the norm, and volatility drives cautious behaviour. Investment slows, hiring pauses, expansion plans freeze. These are not dramatic collapses, they are slow suffocations. What makes this phase especially volatile is the lack of clarity. Musk hasn't outlined demands, he hasn't offered conditions. That ambiguity is strategic. It keeps opponents guessing. And in politics and markets alike, uncertainty is often more damaging than bad news. As Britain struggles to regain control, one thing becomes clear. This confrontation is no longer just about policy or personality. It's about who sets the rules in a globalised digital economy. Governments write laws, but capital chooses where to go. And right now, capital is watching Elon Musk, not Westminster, for the next signal. By now, the confrontation has moved into a far more dangerous phase. It is no longer silent. It is no longer subtle. The tension between Elon Musk and the Starmer government is spilling into public view, and the consequences are accelerating faster than officials expected. What began as economic hesitation is turning into political pressure, and Britain's leadership is feeling it from every direction. Inside Downing Street, advisors are divided. One camp argues that Musk must be confronted head on. They believe allowing a single billionaire to influence national policy sets a dangerous precedent. To them, this is about sovereignty, about drawing a line and proving that elected governments, not tech titans, set the rules. But another camp is far more alarmed. They warn that escalation could trigger a chain reaction the UK cannot control. Once global investors sense a hostile environment, they don't wait for clarification, they leave. The problem is teaming. Britain is already economically exposed, growth is fragile, debt levels are high, confidence is thin. This is not the moment to test how resilient the system really is. And yet the clash is forcing exactly that test. Every hour without resolution increases the risk of long-term damage. Public debate is becoming more polarised. Supporters of the government argue that Musk is overreaching, attempting to bully a democratic nation to suit his business interests. Critics counter that ideology is being allowed to override economic reality. They ask a simple question. Can Britain afford to alienate one of the most powerful figures in global innovation? The argument plays out across television panels, newspapers, and social media feeds, amplifying anxiety. Meanwhile, the economic indicators continue to tell a worrying story. Recruitment in the tech sector slows noticeably, startups delay launches, financial institutions quietly revise risk assessments related to UK exposure. None of this appears dramatic on its own, but together it forms a pattern of hesitation, and hesitation in economics is contagious. International partners begin to distance themselves diplomatically, not openly, not dramatically, but cautiously. Meetings are postponed. Commitments are softened. Language becomes more conditional. Britain, once seen as a stable anchor, now feels uncertain. That perception alone carries immense cost. Musk's silence remains one of the most destabilising elements. He does not clarify his position. He does not back down. He lets speculation do the work. Supporters interpret his stance as a stand for innovation and freedom. Critics see it as reckless power play. Either way, the impact is undeniable. His influence stretches far beyond any single company or platform. For Starmer, the pressure is now intensely personal. This confrontation risks defining his leadership. Is he the Prime Minister who stood firm against corporate pressure, or the one who underestimated how global power truly operates? There may be no version of this story where he escapes unscathed. As days pass without resolution, one uncomfortable truth becomes clearer. Britain is caught between two forces that don't easily compromise: a government bound by politics, public opinion, and ideology, and a global figure driven by speed, capital, and leverage. When those forces collide, the damage rarely stays contained. This is no longer just a clash of egos, it is a stress test of modern governance itself, and Britain's is discovering in real time how exposed even established democracies can be when economic power decides to push back. As the standoff drags on, the damage moves from markets and phase into everyday life. This is the stage where political crises stop feeling distant and start feeling personal. Workers notice hiring freezes. Contractors see projects paused without explanation. Young professionals begin updating resumes, not because they want to leave Britain, but because they fear they may have to. Economic confidence doesn't collapse in a single moment. It erodes quietly, decision by decision. Inside major UK corporations, risk committees meet more frequently. Executives demand updated exposure reports. Legal teams reassess regulatory uncertainty. Boardrooms begin asking questions that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Should future investment be shifted abroad? Should expansion plans be delayed? Should Britain still be considered a safe long-term base? These questions alone are corrosive. Once asked, they cannot be unasked. The Starmer government attempts to regain footing by accelerating policy messaging. Ministers speak of stability, resilience and long-term vision, but the public hears something else beneath the words urgency, and urgency signals weakness. Markets sense it, investors sense it, confidence slips further. At the same time, Elon Musk's influence continues to expand indirectly. Online discussions explode. Supporters frame him as standing up to overregulation and political rigidity. Critics accuse him of holding the economy hostage. But regardless of where people stand, his presence dominates the conversation. He has effectively set the agenda without holding office, without passing laws, without issuing ultimatums. That is the true shock of this moment. Political pressure inside Parliament intensifies. Opposition figures demand explanations. Committees call for inquiries into the government's handling of foreign investment relations. Backbenchers grow restless, worried about their constituencies and their futures. Unity fractures. Leaks increase. Anonymous briefings appear in the press, each contradicting the last. When power feels threatened, discipline collapses. International investors begin comparing Britain to other destinations more openly. Europe, Asia, North America, places where regulatory frameworks feel clearer, where political risk feels lower. This doesn't mean Britain is finished, but it does mean it is no longer first choice, and falling from first choice to backup option is one of the hardest positions to recover from. Perhaps the most alarming shift is psychological. For years, Britain sold itself as predictable, stable and rules-based. That image is now cracking, not because of revolution or collapse, but because of confrontation, because a single unresolved conflict has exposed how sensitive the system really is. Inside Whitehall, some officials privately admit they underestimated Musk's leverage. Not his wealth, but his ability to shape belief. In modern economies, belief drives behaviour, and behaviour drives outcomes. Once belief turns negative, recovery requires more than reassurance. It requires decisive change. As this phase unfolds, Britain finds itself at a crossroads. De-escalation may still be possible, but every hour of delay raises the cost. Escalation, on the other hand, risks pushing the economy into deeper instability. There is no clean exit, only choices with consequences. And hovering over all of it is one unresolved reality. Elon Musk has not played his strongest card yet. He hasn't spoken directly. He hasn't made a defining move. And that restraint keeps everyone guessing. Because when power stays silent, history shows it is often preparing to act.